So we have a email set up for questions at daylightchurch.com for people who have questions about the sermon, question about why we do what we do, who we are, what we believe, how we handle the finances, whatever it is that you want to know, we're happy to address the questions. And I got a question this week, and I told somebody before the service, I don't think, and I've preached hundreds, maybe 1,000 or more sermons in my life. I don't think I've ever had a more difficult time preparing a sermon. And it wasn't so much that the topic was impossible. It was just that I had no motivation. I felt dry and like nothing was coming. And the more I've thought about it, I feel like that was a spiritual thing because today's topic is so important. And I'll read this question, and you'll see it's actually not even a question. It was somebody kind of pouring out their heart to questions at daylightchurch.com. He says, "I love my family a lot, but my relationship with my dad has always been distant. His tone is like he has given up on me, and I'm so sick of it. I know in my head that God is our Father and He loves us, but I never had this reflected in my life, and I feel like I am damaged goods, and I am not worthy of love." And there wasn't even a question attached. It was just kind of let's talk about this. And of course, there was another shooting at Marshall County High School this week, and most of us, that's just a blip on our radar at this point. I remember when the Heath High School shootings happened, we were glued to our televisions for days, and now it happens, and we just kind of slough it off and move on. I know Terry Adams is in the audience, and we had some high school classmate who lost his daughter in this shooting, and it's been closer to home this time. And one of my friends, Doug Carter, posted a post on Facebook that I think was important. He said, "I have no idea if this accused boy," so he's talking about the person who did this terrible thing, "I have no idea if this accused boy was bullied or not. But I can say from experience that an awkward 15-year-old who maybe didn't have the cool clothes, good looks, hang with the in crowd, maybe had the words band fag slung his way, doesn't have the easiest life." And this isn't in any way, and Doug was very careful to say this isn't in any way to condone something terrible. It's not to condone violence. It's just to say that somehow this attitude of rejection and bullying and one-upsmanship and such that is so ingrained in our culture and so ingrained in our society, it hurts people. And I would bet, I don't know this, but I would bet that this shooting and most of the other shootings have somehow, some way been tied into this topic we're going to speak about today, which is the topic of rejection. It's when we're not accepted, we're not brought in, but instead we're kept on the outside. And so I'm calling it the rejection connection because it rhymes, and hopefully that will keep it in your heads of sorts. But we're talking about the redo during this series, and I'm actually cheating a little bit. I didn't intend to go this route, but this topic of rejection has been in my mind so much that I just really, really wanted to cover it, and it sort of ties in that we've been talking about how the past, so when we talk about a redo, when we're talking about wishing we could do things over, we're talking about the past. But last week we talked about how the past is gone. It's forever gone. It will never be again, and all you have is right here, right now, and that's all you'll ever have, is the right here, right now. And that you don't have to be dictated by that tsunami juggernaut that is flowing in from your past that is trying to say this is who you have to be because this is who you've always been. That's a lie. It's not true. Just because you've always been, just because you've always acted a certain way, been a certain way, thought a certain way, it doesn't mean that can't change. And that's the idea of the redo. So there's no such thing as a redo in the past, but we talked about repurposing. We talked about a redo in the now, is that we don't have to move forward the same way that we've always moved forward. And we talked about the importance of taking a moment in the here and now. So there's some activities that time passes in a flash. I mean, if you're jumping off a ramp in a dirt bike, it's gonna go quick. But if you sit and contemplate and sit and think and meditate and look at your life and examine your life, which is what we talked about last week, that time tends to slow things down. It seems like time slows down. And we talked about the importance of taking time to slow down and ask difficult questions about your life. Questions about your greatest fears, questions about your motivation, questions about things you're even blind to, which I didn't cover last week. It's important that you ask God, what are some things that I'm not aware of? What are things about me that I don't know that you know? And here's another thing you can do, is ask your friends that question and be prepared. You need friends that you can say that. Tell me about me and stuff that I need to improve on. And you need to have a relationship. We're so offended all the time that we can't even possibly ask that question of our friends. But you need to be able to ask that question of people, is what can I do better? What's wrong with my life? Because people outside yourself will see things that you'll never see. But I want to focus today, when we talk about this rejection topic, on experiences that have shaped you in a negative or a positive way. Because rejection shapes people. Rejection shapes how you view yourself right here, right now. And it can be as simple as you weren't picked for the kickball team growing up, you were passed over for a promotion, you were turned down by the prom queen. That all of us have experienced rejection at some point in our lives. And if we've allowed that rejection to shape how we view ourselves, then now here in the here and now, we're not able to be everything God asked us to be. We're not able to be what God designed us to be because we view ourselves as rejected and thus rejects. And just because you've experienced rejected, it does not make you a reject. But sometimes we get that messed up in our minds. I was talking this week with somebody that I care about very much. And she said this. She said, I didn't have very many friends. I'm paraphrasing. This was kind of a conversation wrapped up in one. She said, I didn't have very many friends in high school. And recently when I asked some people over for a movie, it was so hard. So it's really hard for her to invite people into her life to be friendly with her. And she wonders if that has to do with the friendships that she did or didn't have in high school. And she says, I didn't want them to come over just because I asked, even if they didn't want to. So the assumption is people didn't like me then, or the feeling is that maybe they didn't like me then. So chances are they pretty much don't like me now. But do you see that that is not true? It doesn't have to be true at all. And so that's my point, is that when you come up feeling rejected, embracing rejection, and applying it to your life, then rejection applies to the here and now, and you see yourself as worthy of rejection. And you're not worthy of rejection. What Jesus said about you is that you're the light of the world, that you are a city on a hill that cannot be hidden. Jesus said you are something special. And when Jesus spoke this sermon, he wasn't sitting around with his buddies in a campfire saying, Peter, you're the light of the world. James, you're the light of the world. Instead, it was a Sermon on the Mount where thousands of people were listening, and he was saying, you personally, you are the light of the world. So he says it to the vast crowd, the audience. You are the light of the world. You are a city on a hill. So I have random thoughts about rejection today, and hopefully they'll tie into some spiritual stuff too, is kind of the goal. But I want to talk about rejection and talk about some lessons that you can learn and things that you can think about when we talk about dealing with rejection. And one is to take a lesson from Norma Jean Mortensen. Who knows, just by a show of hands, who knows who Norma Jean Mortensen is? Who is it? Sid? Marilyn Monroe, that's right. Isn't that an unfortunate name? Norma Jean Mortensen. Okay. So Norma Jean Mortensen became Marilyn Monroe. And upon her death in 1962, I believe it was, her films had grossed an unbelievable $200 million. And I did some searching online to try to translate what does that amount today. And it amounts to about $1.6 billion in today's funds. So the money that came in due to her films was approximately $1.7 million. Now to put that in perspective, the newest Star Wars movie is projected to make about $1.7 billion. So Marilyn Monroe's films as a whole were as popular as the most recent Star Wars movie, which is kind of a big deal. I mean, she was well known. She continues to be well known. She continues to be idolized by a lot of people. And yet, she had this quote to say near the end of her life. She said, "Sometimes I feel my whole life has been one big rejection." So even in this picture, I mean, this dude has issues, right? This guy at the bottom of the screen here. But she was idolized. I mean, everywhere she went, cameras snapped, people screamed, people cried, people fainted because she was so admired and so adored. And yet, deep down, she felt like she wasn't worthy of attention. And so when we talk about feeling rejected, there's this sense that we think of I was the nerd in high school that played Dungeons and Dragons during my lunch breaks. That was me, okay? So those are the kids you think of as worthy of rejection. But look at me now, right? So, but why is that so funny? So my point is this: you can't tell by looking at somebody. You can't tell by the amount of fame they have. You can't tell by the amount of wealth they have, the amount of travel they've experienced. You can't tell. Marilyn Monroe had it all and still felt rejected. Rejection is something we all face. It's something we've all dealt with. And so my first point is basically learn from her to know that you're not alone. If you feel rejected, understand that you're human, and humans are always going to be rejected in one sense or another. You are not alone in this. And of course, we look to the King of the world, Jesus. And when you look at if you look at the history and the life of Jesus, it's one rejection after another. When he went to his hometown to do miracles, they said, "Who's this guy? This is the carpenter's son, right?" He couldn't even do miracles in his hometown because people rejected him so much. He was rejected by the religious leaders. Obviously, they wanted him hung on a cross. One of his close friends betrayed him. At the point of his greatest need, when he was desperate, he was crying and weeping and sweating blood. He was so stressed out, his buddies just took a nap and kind of ignored him. He was betrayed by another close friend. He was beaten. He was spat on. And ultimately, he was brutally killed. One day, they're shouting at him, "Hosanna, glory to God in the highest." The next day, they're yelling, "Crucify him, crucify him." So if there's anybody who felt rejection and the pains of rejection, it was the King of all. And so you're not alone. Even God, when he experienced interaction with mankind, experienced terrible rejection. It doesn't make you weak to feel rejected. It doesn't make you lesser to have been rejected. It makes you normal. Now, the second point is that I want you to learn from Sly and the Family Stone. And Sly and the Family Stone, now I don't remember, it's called Humankind, or they have a song, there's a catchphrase in that song that we use pretty often that you probably don't know came from Sly and the Family Stone. And I'll get to that in just a second. But first, I'm going to brag about our song list, our music list at Daylight Church, because it's something we've started. You can go to mydaylightchurch.com and you can just get on it. There's an Apple music list and a Spotify music list. And all you got to do is go. There's a podcast link, some book lists. I'm super excited about it. I've never heard about another church doing it, and I'm jamming out to this song list. I mean, who's listening to our song list? A handful of people. It's good, isn't it? I mean, it's a solid song list. It's a great list. I love it. But my point is, in Sly and the Family Stone, there's this line that you've probably said in your lifetime or heard multiple times in your lifetime, and it says, "Different strokes for different folks." And I never knew where that came from, and apparently most people think it came from this Sly and the Family Stone song. But when we play a song list like this, now I love each of those songs. I listen to the whole list, and it just fires me up and pumps me up. Now, some of you heard the song From Me Without You and like, how can that possibly be on a church playlist? And I never want to hear that again. Some of you hear the last song, and it's a jazz song, it's a soft jazz, and you think, right? And the point is that not all of us are going to agree when it comes to music. This is a subjective thing. And there's going to be some music that we accept and some music that we reject. But I want to point out that humanity and who we are friends with and who we embrace and who we want on our kickball team and who we want to take to the prom, it's like that too. And some people are going to like you and some people aren't. Some people are going to want to be close to you and some people aren't. And that is okay. That's a fine place to be in life. And in fact, as we'll talk about in just a moment, any other possibility means you're kind of faking your way through life. It means you're adapting to other people a little too much. And the next time you're discouraged because somebody doesn't like you, I want to remind you about this next little music video. It's so terrible. And it's sold over 1 million copies. So it's not just, so this song will get in your head. It's not just that people liked this song, it topped the charts at one point. 1 million people paid money to listen to this. So the next time you're feeling rejected, just remember that some people like the Rhinestone Cowboy, which means some people aren't right in the head. Okay? So just get that in your head that some people will and some people won't, and it's a taste thing. It's a subjective thing. And part of your job as a person who has felt rejected is to find the people who don't reject you, because there are always going to be some who do. I read this week that there's no such thing as rejection, there is only selection. So if you got looked over for a job, somebody else got the promotion, you feel rejected, but the reality is you weren't rejected, the other person was selected. And that is a subjective thing. And there could be 1,000 reasons, but it doesn't have to be personal, is what I'm saying. And rejection does not a reject make. All of us have been rejected. All of us will be rejected, but it does not and never should become part of your identity, is that I am a reject because of rejection. I also wanted to say that you were not born to buddle. And somebody tried to correct me on this. In the movie Clue. What? You shut your yapper. So in the movie Clue with Tim Curry, he says, I'm the butler, sir. And he says, what do you do? He says, well, I buttle. And it means he's in charge. The one who buttles is the butler. And he's the one in charge of the kitchen and the dining room, basically. And what happens is, if you try to not be rejected in life, if you try to please people pleasing is not, I don't even know if I put that on my thing here, but people pleasing is not a virtue. We tend to think that making everybody happy with us, making everybody accept us, is one of the most important things we can do in our lives. And the reality is, trying to do that is one of the worst things you can do with your life. When we started this church, some of my pastor friends said, here's what you got to do. And this is what I wish we had done 20 years ago, is you establish your identity. You establish that your 4 pillars are service, study, devotion, and outreach, and that's who you are as a church. You establish that you're a church for not-so-churchy people. You establish that you're a church that plays me without you videos in the middle of service, and whatever happens, happens. But then you stay with that identity. Don't let people come in and start saying, well, your church ought to be like this, your church ought to be like that. Instead, establish your identity and then figure out who stays. And that's what the selection process is like when it comes to your life, is you be you. You do you. You connect with Jesus, live for Him, and be everything He designed you to be. And some are going to like it and some won't, but you continue to do you. Scripture is replete with ideas in this capacity, or in this area. It says, if I were trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. So that seems pretty clear, is you can't serve Christ with all your heart and be worried about what everybody thinks about you. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. And Jesus said this, He said, what sorrow awaits you who are praised by the crowds? The other translations read it like this. This is a sort of a paraphrase translation. Other ones say, woe to you when everyone speaks well of you. Woe to you meaning, whoa, watch out, buddy. Beware. That's what Jesus means, is danger if everybody likes you. If everybody likes you, you're in a scary place. And it probably means it's because you're butlering, you're buttling. You are catering to everyone. You're trying to keep everyone happy. And that is not a healthy way to live your life. And I have lost my spot, so I'll be back with you in a moment. Here we go. Here, I get to make up words as a preacher. That's so great. Change the spection angle. Spection is not a word, but spection is kind of the root of some other words that we know, like perspective. Okay, so I'm calling spection what you look at. All right, and something that you want to be really good at is introspection. And what do you think introspection means? Looking inside, right. It's perspective on the inside. It's giving yourself perspective about you. And I would be remiss not to stand up here and say, if you were rejected, some of it might be your fault. Now, maybe that's hard to hear. Maybe nobody wants to think about that. But maybe there are things you need to change to experience the acceptance that you hunger for. And I don't mean this for the individual who wrote in the question earlier. I'm not talking about father issues and family issues, but I am saying in all of this stuff, in all those relationships, and every time you were rejected, every time you were looked over for the job, every time you weren't picked for the kickball team, maybe, let's just be straight, maybe you weren't picked for the kickball team because you are crappy at kickball, right? Let's be honest about rejection, is that some of us are good at some things and some of us are good at other things, and there are some things we can change and some things we can't, and we need to be introspective and look at the things that we can change and change them. I grew up playing volleyball. After high school, through college, played fairly competitively, played in tournaments where AVP pros showed up, and we had a blast playing volleyball, and my entire social circle was around volleyball. Well, in college was also the same time that I kind of surrendered my life to Jesus and became a follower of Jesus that was trying to be fully committed to Him. And a time came, this was one of the hardest moments of my life. There were these guys that I was playing volleyball with every day. We were either out on the sand playing until 4 in the morning, or we were elsewhere. And in cold weather, we were shooting pool and having fun and playing euchre. And these were my best friends in the world. And when we'd go to the cafeteria, we went as a tribe. This was my family at college. And one day came when I started calling these guys saying, hey, where are we meeting for lunch? Hey, when are we playing ball? And nobody would return my calls. Nobody. They would not respond to me at all. We didn't have texting back then. We started to have pagers at that point. But I'd go knocking on their doors and nobody was home. And it's like my entire circle of friends just vanished from my life overnight. And I didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. And to this day, there's been very little communication about it. We slowly, over time, we continued to play volleyball together, but it was like I didn't get invited anyplace afterwards. It was really, really weird stuff. And when I would ask people about it, they were just evasive. Oh, yeah, we were just hanging out and doing this. Nobody would answer me. And I've come to understand over the years that the issue was partially me. And not entirely me, I don't think, but partially me, because when I became a follower of Jesus, I also became a zealot. I mean, I was as zealous as they came. I was inviting everybody to Bible study all the time, inviting them to come pray with me in my room. I mean, I was, telling people stuff they were doing wrong and saying you shouldn't be doing that. And I became kind of a super spiritual jerk in some sense. And that was something I was completely blind to at that point in my life. But now I see it pretty clearly that everybody's on a different journey and you have to let people move at their own pace. But I didn't see it back then. So then I blamed my rejection on them. Thought, what's wrong with you? Oh, yeah? Well, and if I got some sense that it was about spiritual stuff, I thought I was justified because I was a follower of Jesus. And as a follower of Jesus, you're going to be persecuted. And so I'm just experiencing the persecution that comes with being a follower of Jesus. And it was still just me looking at me like, well, I couldn't possibly be doing any wrong here. And when you experience rejection, I think it's very important you take that time to meditate and stop and look and say, what about me? That has to enter the equation. It may not be about you. It may be subjective. It may just be a different taste in music, and you're not the particular jam they like. But it may be that you're being a jerk somehow, or that you're being really difficult somehow, or that you're needy, and they don't want to be around a needy person all the time, that you take and take and take and never give. There's all kinds of reasons why you might be rejected, and some of them may be in you. And rejection breeds rejection. So what happens is when you're rejected and you feel rejected, you lose confidence. And when you lose confidence, you become less attractive. People like confident individuals. And so there's this circle that happens, this thing that can happen where you become rejected, you view yourself as a reject, you start acting like a reject, and nobody wants to be around somebody who acts like a reject all the time. So somewhere there's got to be something to break this circle. That you say, I may have been rejected, but that doesn't make me a reject. And you find some kind of confidence in you to rise up, because rejection breeds rejection, and that circle needs to be broken somehow. I was at Murray State. I was writing my second book, and we were in the editing process, and I was with my friend Becky Lyle. I may have told this story in here before, but it was a really important moment in my life. And there was a glass elevator behind where we were sitting going through page after page after page, just editing line by line, word by word. And we were there for hours, for days doing this. And at one point, all these kids started pouring into the building. It's a beautiful open-air building, so there's this glass elevator that goes up 3 stories, and you can see everybody get in and get out. And it's right behind where I'm sitting. And I see Becky look up, and she starts going like this, waving at whoever's in the elevator behind me. And I turn around, and there's 30 kids, probably this tall, plastered against the glass. And their face, there's so many in there that they're plastered against the glass. And Becky's just feeling lively because these kids are smiling and waving and having a good time. They're getting a day off of school. And then they got out and they walked up the stairs on the second floor. And I remember Becky saying to me, she said, when I see a group of kids like that, because she's a teacher, has a teacher's heart, she says, when I see a group of kids like that, I try to make a point to notice the most rejected one, or the one who doesn't look the coolest, or the one who doesn't look the most popular. And she says, I make a special effort to wave and smile at that kid. I just thought how beautiful that was and how amazing that was. And if you feel rejected, if you feel like you weren't the prom king growing up or the prom queen growing up, and who is really? Statistically, very few are. One of your goals needs to be find other people that feel the same. Because there are all kinds of people out there that feel that way. There's all kinds of people that feel the same way you do. And community can be formed around all kinds of different things. And one of the things that can be formed around is, I'm lonely. I don't feel accepted. I don't feel rejected. So if you find each other, now you have community and family. And so one of the things you can do to solve the feeling of rejection is just to reach out to other people who may have felt rejected. And it's a practice all of us should engage in, is reaching out to those who feel rejected. God seems to think this way. It seems to be a kingdom of God principle. There's a couple Psalms. One says, when my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. Psalm 68 describes God as a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God and his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. He leads out the prisoners with singing. And when you look at the life of Jesus, all he did was reach out to, the lepers in his time were forced to walk around banging gongs, saying, I have leprosy, so nobody could come close to them. If you've ever felt rejected in your life, think about those guys. And those are the people that Jesus approached and embraced. The kingdom of God is a kingdom of reaching out to the rejects. 2 more points and I'm done, I think. Yeah, 2. One is you only have one person in your audience that you need to be concerned about. Life is lived as a play in front of an audience of one. You are not designed to impress every other human being. All of us are corrupted. All of us are messed up in our thinking. None of us see other individuals through perfect lenses. We see them through our own lenses, and all of our own lenses are messed up. So whatever rejection you felt, whatever, in the clip we showed at the beginning with Steve Martin, that he doesn't like that guy. He verbalizes that he doesn't like that guy. But in that scene, Steve Martin is pretty awful, isn't he? And just recognize that if you have been rejected, it's because of some awful root somewhere. Because in the kingdom of God will be a kingdom where people are not rejected by one another. People are accepted and embraced by one another. There's something going wrong outside of you, even if there's something in you that needs to change. Jesus said this, he said, worship the Lord your God and him only. What you worship is what you surrender to. And so if you surrender to rejection, if you surrender to people, if you surrender to trying to match up to other people's standards for fear of rejection, you are laying down your life for something other than what Jesus said you should. Jesus said one thing. There's one thing that you should be concerned with, and that's an audience out there of one person that you want clapping at the end, and that person is God. It's the only opinion that matters. Now, obviously, you want influence in people's lives. You want to be able to connect with others and love others, which requires connecting and peacemaking and catering to a certain extent, but it means it's not the goal of your life, is that other people will appreciate you. And then finally, don't ride the lazy river. The lazy river, you guys are all familiar with, is at these theme parks where there's all kinds of activities you could do that actually require climbing stairs and things like that, standing in line. Lazy river is you get on a tube and you float. And some people, my son, for whatever reason, he wants to float around these things 20 times. I mean, we can do it for hours. Can we go one more time down? I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. But the lazy river is how so many people go through life. And it's this, that your past, which may be filled with rejection, is pushing you forward and you're letting it. You're just laying back and going where the current takes you. Well, I think a person who is, as Jesus said, the light of the world gets up off that platform, gets up off that river and says, I'm not going to let this carry me through the rest of my life. I'm not going to let what happened or what people thought or what people said or how I was viewed or the rejection I faced or the job I didn't get or the homecoming queen crown that I never got to wear. I'm not going to let that push me through the rest of my life. I'm not going to let that determine what my life looks like. Instead, you get off the lazy river and you don't allow those things to control you and own you, but instead you believe the words of Jesus, the audience of one, the one whose opinion really matters, who says, you are bright. You are the kind of person that I want to put up on a hill for the whole world to see. That's how Jesus views you. And that's how we ought to view ourselves.